We are the nerds of a nation. We are the nerds of a nation. We are.
The Walking Dead, Issue 4.
Well, hello, brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on The Walking Dead. This one's will be for Issue 4. And in the last issue, we were introduced to a lot of new characters at the camp outside of Atlanta. Our hero, Rick Grimes, was reunited with his wife Lori and son Carl. And pretty much it was just a character building and character development type of episode. This one, though, and we also know we have gotten clued in a little bit that his best buddy Shane wants to, give it to his wife Lori. So apparently there's been something going on there, or we don't know if it's two-way yet or if it's just Shane. Who knows? Everybody thought Rick was dead for a month or so when he was in the hospital. But without further ado, let's get into issue 4, shall we? So this one starts out, and it's later on at night, and Shane is actually on top of the RV. He's taken watch for this shift at night, and Rick is quietly trying to kind of sneak up on him. Not really sneak up on him, but he just wants to talk with him, and he doesn't want to wake everybody else up in the camp. But they just, of course, had Donna was attacked by a zombie just the day prior, and really had almost got killed. So Rick wants to have a conversation with Shane to voice his concern, and ultimately to say, hey, I think that we should move the camp. Everybody doesn't have weapons to arm themselves. These aren't fighters, and we can't protect people out in the open over here. And Shane says, abso-fucking-lutely not, Rick. It's not happening. When the government comes in to clean this mess up, they're going to go and hit the big cities first. So staying here, camped right outside of Atlanta, is going to be much better for us. If we go into the country, into the hills, wherever, it could be months because we have no communication. We're cut off. So him and Rick banter back and forth for a bit, and eventually Rick gives in. He sees that Shane has a pretty strong stance on it, and Shane says, hey, listen, that thing with the zombie yesterday was an isolated incident. These things very rarely happen. So Rick still senses that there's danger, and he would like to sleep a little better at night, especially with his wife and child being there, and probably feeling as well responsible for this group. He is a police officer, serve and protect, and all that sort of good thing. So he talks to Shane and says, listen, what we do need to do then if we're going to stay here is we need to make sure that everybody is carrying a gun and knows how to use it. If this was the case, Donna could have just turned and fired, and pointed at the zombie and shot it yesterday. So the next day, and then Shane, of course, is like, well, that's a great idea, but, where are we going to get that much, firepower? So the next day, Rick happens upon Glenn, and if you remember, he's the little Asian guy with the baseball cap that got him out of the city, out of Atlanta, and he's kind of the runner. He goes in and out and gets in there, gets some needed supplies, comes back out. So Rick talks to him and tells him about his plan and says, listen, do you know of a gun store in Atlanta? And he says, I don't, but I know someone who might, and it's a person with the same namesake as me, by chance. It's Jim. And Jim is actually the one that was in Atlanta and was able to get out. So they go over and talk with Jim, and immediately when they ask him about a gun store that's close to the edge of town, he says, I'm 38th and, whatever. And Glenn says, okay, great, I got a map. Glenn then, there's a quick exchange after that between Glenn and Rick, because Rick says, is that Jim all right? And he says, no, not really. He's one of the people, he made it out of Atlanta, but he made it out basically on the backs of his dead family. I guess his wife, his kids, his brother, or his sister and brother-in-law, they were all pretty much taken upon by a group of zombies, and while the zombies were chomping and eating on them, he was able to get away. And so he probably feels probably has terrors, nightmares, but he feels some remorse and some regret because obviously he got away and his family did not. So he's a little bit messed up in the head, I think, because of that. So well, the next scene, kind of moving on, we have Glenn and Rick tasked with going into the city, and Glenn looks on the map and he's like, man, this is like 5 blocks further in from where I found you. I've never been that deep into the city. And Rick says, you know what, we're going to be fine. I got an idea. So he takes Glenn out to the woods where him and Shane were hunting the day prior, and where they came upon that zombie that was chomping on the deer, the one with the glasses, and that Rick had put his hatchet in his head. he goes up. Rick goes up to it, and they drag the body over, and Rick starts hacking off pieces of the body with his hatchet. And he says, "Listen, I don't know exactly how these things work, but how come you think they never attack each other? I mean, we all got arms and legs, right? They never mistake one of their own though for one of us." And he goes, "And I've mistaken them from a distance for a human, for somebody who's not infected." So his theory is that they rely on smell. They smell different. So he goes and basically says, "Hey, let's rub some of this zombie shit, guts all over us, maybe stick a finger, an arm, whatever in some of our pockets. We'll smell like them. We'll be able to kind of assimilate and blend in, or at the very least not draw as much attention." So Glenn thinks it's kind of crazy as he's starting to rub the stuff on him, the zombie guts on him. He barfs, winds up barfing again on the way into the city. So they wind up sneaking into the city, and there's a zombie just kind of laying there, and Rick goes up to it, and it slaps his hand away, and Glenn's freaking. He's like, "This isn't going to work. This isn't going to work, Rick." And Rick goes, "Yeah, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it, Glenn. He just was annoyed that I was near it, but he's not getting up and coming after us. We're cool." So they also, it's worth mentioning too at this point that Rick says, "What the hell? Why did it all of a sudden get all cloudy? I guess it was sunny prior to that." So that'll come into play in a few minutes. So they wind up working their way into the city, and as they get farther into it, there's more and more zombies, and it starts out with just being a few here or there, and eventually, there's a concentration where they're literally just walking through like a crowd of them, like at a crowded mall or airport or something like that. And Glenn's kind of freaking, and Rick's like, "Don't worry about it. They can't tell, they can't, even though we're talking and everything else, they make noises too. They can't tell it's us." So they do get to the gun store, and Glenn says, "How are we going to get in?" And Rick says, "Hey, it's a wood door," and he starts smacking it with his hatchet, kicks it in. They grab a shopping cart from outside too, and Glenn says, "What's that for?" And he says, "It'll be easier to carry the guns." So they go in there and they start ransacking the place, grabbing everything they can, trying to match up ammo with guns and filling as much as they can and doing it quickly. Because Rick says, "Hey, listen, I think they started kind of getting a little suspicious. The zombies that were outside looking at me hacking in this door with a hatchet. They're starting to catch on. We're not them, right?" So they get all their business done within a few minutes and get out of there. And as they come out of the store, it has started raining, and that's where that whole getting cloudy came into perspective here. Now it starts raining on them, and what happens almost immediately is it starts pouring, and the smell of the zombie parts and the zombie guts they've rubbed on them starts washing off, and whatever smell of a living being that's breathing that these things can detect, whether they're like dogs or bloodhounds, with a good sense of smell, all of a sudden they kind of start coming at him, and there's a lot. So Rick goes ballistic with the hatchet and the gun, starts going batshit crazy, just shooting and hacking at everything that he can. One of them grabs him from behind, and looks like it bites right into his shoulder. He screams, and he hacks it, he shoots it. So now we're thinking, Rick's bit, this is terrible. Glenn's running with the cart. He falls over, the cart falls over. Rick's popping off zombies left and right, and he's saying, "Get the cart upright, get as much as you can in, and we'll get to safety." And it's good. It's a tense moment. There was a similar moment, but a little bit different story and plot line in the actual series, the TV series, but with them and having the guts on them and everything, and how the zombies started picking up on it. So it was really cool to kind of see that represented visually in a comic book. So I definitely like the style and how everything's going with it. So it's a real kind of eerie too, being in black and white. So they wind up getting away, narrowly escaping. They do get, some of the guns back. They are able to work their way back out of the city. And, Glenn's like, "Holy shit, that was close," So they stop for a minute and kind of take a quick breather. The chapter ends up shortly after that, the issue. It goes back to, and basically Rick goes and confides in Glenn, and he says, "Listen, don't tell Lori about this. Don't tell my wife about this," because she was really against him going. I didn't mention that, but at the beginning of the chapter when he said he was going into town, she's like, "You were just back 3 days, kind of came back from the dead. Why are you going now? Isn't there somebody else? Can't Glenn go by himself?" And Rick's like, "Be reasonable. How many guns can he carry, right?" So he says, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." So when he talks to Glenn later on in the chapter, he basically says, "Please keep the don't tell her how close we came." He does pull off his jacket though, and check for that bite, and it turns out the thing just bit into his jacket. It didn't actually go and break through the skin, and that's how you get infected. So Rick kind of has a whew, type of moment there where he wipes the sweat off his brow, thinking, "All right, great. Now I don't have to put a bullet in my head or have somebody else do it, right? I'm not infected." They, as they're working their way back, towards the camp or whatever, I'm assuming it's a few miles out of the city, it flashes back and shows Lori, who's standing out in the rain, And also, I think it's worth noting they mentioned that it's starting to get colder at night. So I know Atlanta is notorious being in the southeast of the United States for being called Hotlanta in the summertime. But like anything, if it's approaching winter, I'm sure it's getting cold at night, and they're obviously they're outdoors, sleeping outdoors. So Lori's standing out in the cold, and good old Shane comes up to comfort her and put his arm around her and kind of hit on her a little bit and say, "You should stay out of the cold. Don't worry, Rick'll be fine, Lori. Come on." And Lori kind of gives him the cold shoulder, and then she winds up saying, because he goes to try to grab her hand and say, "Come on back to the camp where it's nice and warm, and you can dry off, and I'll snuggle with you. Maybe lick your ear a little bit." And he's like a little lost puppy dog. He wants her so bad. God, a blind man could see it. So, Lori basically kind of rebuffs him and says, "Listen, Rick is back now. You got to stop this making advances on me or hitting on me or whatever." And the next page is the final page, and it's just these series of panels, and he basically says, "But what about that one night down by the road and this and that?" So clearly they got together and maybe did a little fucky, or maybe they were just making out. I have no idea what's going on. All I know is that there's something that she regrets, because she then goes in a couple panels later after being quiet as she's walking away. She's like, "Yeah, let's just forget about that. That was a mistake." So Shane doesn't seem to think so. I don't know. My opinion and thought is going to be that's going to escalate into something bad, but who knows? So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Throw me a like if you feel I deserve it, and of course subscribe if you haven't done so already. Stick around too, and the normal outro that I have will not be taking place today. There will be a little bit of a treat. For those of you that have been following me, you know that I'm also doing reviews on the epic tale One Piece, the manga, and I've been doing some artwork for that. So I'll be having some Walking Dead artwork coming soon, but in the interim, please take a look at what I have at the end over here, and let me know what you think. Take it easy, nation.
As always, brothers and sisters, thank you for watching my video. Hope you enjoy this somewhat sexy picture of the character Nami from One Piece. I was looking ahead in some of my volumes and found a couple of shots for reference and thought that everybody would enjoy. So let me know what you think, and we'll catch you in the next one.